What is up, everybody? Welcome to this Trainwreck Sports podcast where we are not here to play school. We're here to break down the Week 11 college football slate. Jake Majka, as always, joined by my brother, Alex Majka. First, we're going to get into it. It was the first week of the college football playoff bracket reveals. Not a lot of surprises, I don't think. We'll get the bracket up here.
No, but I have an inherent issue with the way the bracket is revealed.
Okay, what you got?
I think it is dumb, because I did a prediction. We can look at my prediction based off what they actually did, and it's pretty similar. But I think it's stupid. They're like, oh, BYU is the 9 in the ranking, but they're the 4 in the bracket. Just fucking put them at 4. That's what I think is stupid.
Yeah,
they are going to be most likely an undefeated Big 12 champion. They're the 4. Put them at the 4. I just think it's dumb. And Reese Davis having to explain that it's like, well, even though it's this, they're actually this. It's like, that's just stupid. Make Reese Davis' job easier. Why are we doing that?
I disagree with you because BYU is not the 4th best team in the country. So that's what they're saying.
How do we know that? We don't know that.
That's what they're telling us. They're the ones.
There's 6 undefeated teams left in the country. They're one of them.
You're just arguing to argue about this though, because the committee gets to decide. That's what happens here. They choose the rankings.
Yeah, the committee, a bunch of
you don't get a choice.
13 random ass people.
You're coming in hot today. I don't know what the issue is here. I think it's fine.
It's whatever. All right. What do we got? Who the number 1 Oregon? That was my prediction. I was correct.
Oregon.
Number 2 Georgia. Number 3 Miami. Number 4 BYU. It's exactly what I said. Ohio State is the 5, but in the actual ranking, they're like, what are they? 2. Bullshit. Texas 6. That was right. 7. I said Penn State. Are they 7?
Yep.
Yeah, they're 7. I said Tennessee 8, which is correct. Indiana 9. I was cooking, honestly. Alabama 10, which is Notre Dame is 10. I didn't have Notre Dame in at all. I said fuck them.
Yeah, well, that was crazy.
So Bama I had Bama at 10. Notre Dame was obviously 10. I had SMU in just to be fun. At the 11, and then the Boise State the 12. So 10 out of 12. I did pretty good.
That's pretty good.
And my numbering system just makes more sense because I did exactly what they should be and what they are in the bracket.
It doesn't make more sense. It's really not hard to understand how they did the rankings.
When they started doing it, I was confused when they started doing it because I didn't realize that's how they were doing it. I thought they were doing it in my head how I did it. Because I was like, this makes sense. They're doing the 4. Well, they should be ranked the 4.
It was pretty easy to pick up on it when the second team was a Big Ten team.
Yes, but it's still dumb.
I disagree. I think it's the way that it should be. Those are the best teams in the country. It gives us more info on how they're going to be seated going forward and where they would be.
Nevertheless,
that's where I'm at with it. So
it's pretty much, isn't it? It's pretty much what the AP poll is, isn't it?
The only change is in the AP, Georgia is ahead of Ohio State. That's the major change.
Which they should be.
I disagree with that too.
Well, so, it's the exact same except that. So I don't know. Whatever. But I'll take that. 10 out of 12. I did pretty good. I just don't respect Notre Dame.
Well, they're gonna win 11 games probably and make the playoffs. So you're gonna have to
whatever. Against who? Scrubs.
Yeah.
Join a conference.
It doesn't mean that they're not going to make they're going to have beaten at least
a three-loss Notre Dame team or a
four ranked teams. That's better than some teams that are in these playoffs.
Who are their 4 ranked teams? They're beaten.
Louisville, A&M, Navy. They've beaten, and they have Army left on the schedule.
They're not going to beat Army. No, I don't know about that. But I don't know. Is Navy still ranked?
They were when
Navy's not ranked now.
They were when they beat them. That's how you do it.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So they're gonna have beaten a probable 9-3, maybe 8-4 A&M team. Oh, they're gonna have beaten a Louisville team that's probably gonna also be 8-4.
We're not going to do this every week where you just discredit all 8-4 teams. 8-4 is not bad.
No, I know that, but I'm saying a team that just played, that doesn't have a conference and just played a bunch of random teams that are 8-4 and beat them.
Is it their fault right now that SC and Florida State are under 500? No.
Maybe.
It's not their fault. They've pretty much dominated in every game. The loss of Northern Illinois is obviously one of the worst losses on the schedule, but besides the 10-point win against A&M, 7-point win against Louisville, they've had double-digit wins every single other game.
Yeah. They should join a conference, and I'll stop complaining about it.
All right. Well, that's never going to happen. And they're one of the best 12 teams in the country, so they're right where they belong.
Maybe
that's what I would say.
They get smoked in the playoff
by Penn State. I'm sure
Maybe.
Penn State would smoke them.
Maybe
the game will be 13-9 or something like that.
No, come on.
Yes.
Probably. We're not even talking about Notre Dame this week. Really, we're not. That's not one of the games we're focusing on. But
see, but you're too regimented here. Sometimes you just gotta let it.
I know. I'm just thinking. Well, they let up 12 points a game, 12.1 points a game. That's fourth in the country. That's nothing. The defense sucks.
You're just being disrespectful today for no reason.
I just don't have. I have never respected Notre Dame because they aren't in a conference.
All right. Well,
which is kind of a dumb statement because respecting like an Ohio State or a Penn State who beats up on the shitty teams in a conference. Like Ohio State plays Purdue this week. Oh, they're playing Purdue. Like,
all right. See, I don't like these arguments from anybody because what do you want them to do? Like, Ohio State's not going to play a schedule of like LSU, Michigan, Oregon, Penn. It's not. No team is ever going to play that in a season.
No, I understand. I'm just saying it's like it's dumb for me to be like, oh, Notre Dame fucking sucks and they're a fraud because they're not in a conference. But like conference teams play the shitty teams of their conference and whoop up on them, and we were like, oh well, they're in a conference, so it matters more. And I'm subject to that right now. I'm literally saying it right now. But still, join a conference, you fucking losers.
All right. Well, that sure. Let's go with that. I don't really get mad about teams in power conferences if their schedule breaks the right way because year to year, like
they're not in a power conference. That's what I'm saying.
But their schedule, it's not like they're ever scheduling like 9 MAC teams. Like they play 6 games against the ACC. They always play USC. They always play Stanford. They're playing power conference teams at least 8 games of the year. Stanford is in the ACC. Well, Stanford's actually in the ACC now.
Yeah, actually in the ACC. Yeah.
So they're playing as many power conference teams as all these other teams are playing. The Indiana Hoosiers are 9-0 right now. They're out of conference with FIU, Western Illinois, and Charlotte. And their toughest team that they've played is Nebraska. Like, it's just who falls in front of you. And that was a good game. We thought that was going to be a good game. They were 5-1 Nebraska.
Yeah, Big Nebraska. We got tricked by Nebraska.
But that's what I'm saying. Like sometimes the schedules just work out that way, that you get an easy schedule for the year. Like, and especially with 18 team conferences, we're gonna have some of those years. Like BYU right now is, I mean, they had Kansas State on there, but their Big 12 schedule broke nice. That's the only ranked team they've had to play. They get Utah this week in the first Holy War in the Big 12, and Utah is obviously limping in.
It's the first Holy War in the Big 12. It's just a funny phrase. The first Holy War. Yeah, so, I don't know. When they play Arizona was a good team when they played them. They weren't ranked, but
they weren't ranked. Arizona, what is Arizona's record on the year? I think they're 5-3. Can't remember.
Arizona they're 3-3.
3-6.
Oh no, they were
bad team. They beat up on Kansas State. That's holding a lot of weight for BYU this year, but that's why they're at 9 because the schedule is rough.
Yeah.
Let's get into a team that they could see later in the season. The Colorado Buffaloes.
Oh, okay. We'll start with this
6-2,
right.
Number 20 in the nation. Going to Texas Tech, who's coming off their biggest win of the season, upsetting Iowa State, which we did say on this podcast to look out for last week. If you think we don't know ball for some reason, we were talking about Texas Tech and talking about games that could be upsets. That's the one we circled. We were like, hey, Tech scores. Iowa's not going to go undefeated this year. Tech is 6-3. This is a good team. They're not ranked obviously right now. They've had some tough losses this year. Got blown out by Baylor and Washington State. Lost a close game to TCU, but then they get a win last week. They can score. Man, they're 20th in the nation for points for, 119th points against. So this is a perfect matchup. This is a game that falls right into Colorado's lap. It's a tougher environment because it's a road game for Colorado, but Colorado has shown a lot of composure in these environments this year, honestly, and have won. They've won at least on the road at UCF in a game that everybody thought was going to be tricky there. UCF's not a great team, obviously, but this year, Arizona, they destroyed on the road. We were just talking about Arizona's not great, but they've handled their business when they needed to, except that Nebraska game at the beginning of the year. And those first two games for Colorado, you honestly look at it, they're kind of a different team from the rest of the season in those first two games. They've looked more complete, like they kind of found their identity. The line has kind of figured out a little bit more how to protect Shedeur, and that's helped them a lot. They're 8th in the nation in passing yards right now per game. Yeah. Shedeur has been awesome. And
Shedeur he's probably the Big 12 offensive player of the year, I would think. And, at this point of the season.
And Travis Hunter is going to be in New York for the Heisman ceremony, whether he wins or not. I don't know, but he will.
Well, I wanted to have a discussion about that with you. Okay. So Travis Hunter, he's got like third in the Big 12 in yards, and third in the Big 12 with yards, 4th for catches, 2nd most touchdowns. He's got the most pass deflections in the Big 12 with 7. And he's got 2 picks on the season, which is it's like tied for like 11th in the Big 12. That's nothing spectacular. But you could argue people aren't throwing his way because he's such a good corner. I don't think that he is doing enough on both sides of the ball to win the Heisman. And obviously, as crazy as that sounds, because like people want to be like, oh, Charles Woodson played offense. It's like he played like 40 offensive snaps in the season when he won the Heisman. It wasn't like no one was doing what Travis Hunter has done, where he's played both sides of the ball. But I still think you need that output to be considered the guy. And right now, I still think if it's at the season end that Ashton Gianti, if he sets all these rushing records and he breaks them all the Barry Sanders rushing records, that he's the guy for the Heisman. I don't think it's Cam Ward. We've seen a lot of good quarterbacks and put up numbers. Cam Ward isn't shattering any of these records. He's not beating Joe Burrow's touchdown, pass record or his yards, or is as good of a dual threat quarterback as Jaden Daniels was last year. So Cam Ward might be a finalist, but I don't think he should be in that conversation. I think it's a 2-horse race between Travis Hunter and Ashton Gianti. And if Gianti gets to over that 2,000-yard mark past, I don't know the exact number for Barry Sanders, but if he gets past that mark, I think it's his Heisman. And Hunter gets, first-team All-American, unanimous. He'll win the Paul Hornung Award again for most versatile player in college football. And, I mean, he probably might end up as like the defensive player of the year in the Big 12 also. But I don't know. I don't think he is as like, and we had this conversation before. I don't think he's an elite enough corner in college football that he should be warranted as like, winning the Heisman.
I think it's clear that he's the best player in college football, though. And I think that if you watch the games and see the impact he has on both sides, he's not a shutdown corner like one of the top corners in the nation. No, I wouldn't say that, but he is one of the best corners in the country. And he has 757 yards and 8 touchdowns right now. So he could end up with 12 touchdowns, 1,300 yards receiving while playing 50 snaps defensively. I don't know, man. And not being a liability and being above average at the very least. And on a good day, great. I don't know. It's tough. It's tough because I think you just watch him and you're like, that's clearly the best, most dynamic athlete and player in football. Now, if Gianti does get all past all these things, he will get more consideration. But you also have to consider if you're not talking about case for winning the Heisman, but the narrative behind the Heisman. Hunter's going to get all the favoritism over a Boise State running back, no matter what. Like the Colorado guy is going to get the love at this point too. So you have to remember, you have to grade this on a curve a little bit. And right now, we're not even talking about one of the guys who's actually ahead of Gianti in the odds, according to FanDuel. Yeah, Dylan Gabriel is plus 350. Travis Hunter and Cam Ward are tied at plus 185. Jonty is plus 500, and then it drops to 20-1 for Curtis Rourke and Jackson Dart there. And then Shedeur is at 45-1. So they're obviously giving it's only going to be Hunter here, but Hunter is, tied for being the favorite in this award. And I think if they keep winning, if they're 10-2 or 9-3 by the end of the year, I think it's Hunter's to lose, honestly. But I get your case for Jonty. I just think that's where it'll end up.
Obviously, I think those 4 guys right now are locks to be in New York for the ceremony. Dylan Gabriel is obviously he's having a really good season. He's super productive in the number 1 team in the country, and he's a big reason for that. Him being a finalist though is kind of similar to me when Stetson Bennett was a finalist a few years ago. And it was kind of because they're just like the best team in the country, or at least they're the undefeated team. That's why he's gonna be a finalist. That's how Dylan Gabriel feels to me. I think he's a better player than Stetson Bennett, but I don't know, man. I don't know. I want to see a running back win it. Obviously, it'd be really cool if a wide receiver corner wins it. That's happened in the past, but
a running back's won it in the past too.
Yeah, but it's been so long since we saw a wide receiver win it 4 years ago.
Yeah, but
a running back hasn't won since 2015.
This is different than just a wide receiver, though. Like he is at his best wide receiver, but what he does on the field defensively too.
I don't know, man. I never saw Devontae Smith play corner. He might have been good too.
I don't know about
Dude's
that.
fast.
If he would put out there.
I don't know.
Let's talk about this game just in the context of the Big 12 race. As we know, we talked about earlier, BYU's undefeated. They don't have a hard schedule. They look like they're going to cruise on their way. I don't know what the tiebreakers are. With the tiebreakers, we're going to have to figure those out as it comes down to the season. But Colorado and Iowa State do not play each other. Right now, Iowa State is technically ahead of Colorado. I'm assuming it's like a strength of overall record is going to be the first tiebreaker. That's been what a lot of the things is. So as of right now, if they both, ran the table, it would probably be Iowa State, BYU in the Big 12 title game.
Yeah. Iowa
State does have to play Kansas State in the last week of the season. So if Kansas State did upset them and Colorado wins out, which Colorado has besides this Tech game, then they play Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. They have a good path if they get through this game to get to 10-2. And if Iowa State lost to Kansas State, I think that it would be Colorado and BYU then. I think they would end up getting the tiebreaker over those teams and getting in. So
I definitely could see it. It's
it's crazy.
It helps that obviously big thing that they're ranked this week. Just need to see, you need to win out and you need to see Iowa State drop one in front of you. That would play a big thing in it too. If because that gives you an extra week, you add to those stats for those Heisman voters too. So if they can get to that conference championship game, and then honestly, then it would be the full narrative push behind Colorado, behind Dion, behind Shedeur, behind Travis Hunter. If we're going towards that Heisman like we were talking about. If they're 10, if they're 11-2, they won the Big 12, and then are going to the playoff.
Yeah.
Then it's a wrap. But I don't know. It should be a good game.
I put them in here because I think if they win this game, that train starts going where we're talking about. People are talking about every week, like Colorado watch. They get through.
Yeah.
Playoff team, and it's an offense that no one in the country wants to see Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders in a one-game scenario. That's the
thing about Shedeur. Shedeur isn't like coming into the season. Obviously, people talk about him as like for a Heisman candidate because of like just his skill on offense, and he hasn't put up like insane numbers at all. But there's at least 1 or 2 plays a game where you watch him and it's like there's like, besides maybe like Cam Ward like in college football right now, like no one else can make that play. Like some of his throws that he makes are so absurd, and he just like
Shedeur is going to be
oozing with talent.
I'm gonna say very safely that Shedeur is gonna be an amazing NFL quarterback. I feel pretty strongly about that.
Coming into this season where there was like gushing about so much NFL like quarterback talent. It's like him and then I guess Cam Ward. I don't know if Cam Ward's gonna be good in the NFL.
Like Cam Ward's
really,
like sit for a year for sure.
I mean,
Ewers is still a great quarterback prospect. Don't forget about Quinn.
I think he's got to do like a Jordan Love situation. I think he's got to sit 3 years. Honestly.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think he has to sit 3 years.
I think he does. I don't think that guy can come into the NFL right now and be a good, even like a 9-8 quarterback. I really don't think so. And Carson Beck completely has fallen apart.
Well, Beck's not, Beck.
Like, is he even like a second round quarterback? Like, I'm maybe.
Well, let's get into. It's a perfect segue because the Bulldogs are in danger this Saturday. I think Georgia, that number 3 team in the country, they're going into Ole Miss, a team that is playing for their playoff lives. Like if they lose this game, especially with that game going on later that night, being a team who probably win and is going to have a nice road into the playoff. Ole Miss needs this. That place is going to be rocking. We've been looking to this game all season, and Carson Beck has been horrible for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yes.
And it's I don't know what it is. It's a confidence thing. He's just not seeing anything. He doesn't have, elite weapons on the outside anymore. They still have good weapons, and a quarterback should be able to do it. Their defense, Georgia's defense is outstanding. Like this is a classic Georgia team right now where they just need the quarterback to kind of get by and not ruin things for them, a la Stetson Bennett. Don't make negative plays and let this defense dominate, and they'll be fine. But they've had issues with that in the last 4 weeks. He's been rough out, but even going back to the Bama game, honestly, and Kentucky since the SEC play started. But they've won 4 weeks in a row, all by double-digit margins. The thing is now you get at Ole Miss hosting Tennessee back-to-back weeks. And even that game, they get UMass the second week, end of the season, whatever. And then even the Georgia Tech game, I think, is tricky because Georgia Tech is a solid team. Not a great team, but rivalry game. You never know. There's three real games left. This is the toughest one because it's on the road. But I don't feel good about this Georgia team at number 3 in the country with the way Beck's playing in this game. And if there was a spot where I was going to pick an upset, the line scares me because it's basically it's begging you. It does scare me because it is kind of begging you to take Georgia, like take 3 points, 2.5 points, and so it's like it feels really good just like picking Ole Miss in this game with the way Vegas is trending, everything else. But that defense could just destroy Jackson Dart's day. He throws a couple picks, gets sacked 5 times, gets pressured all day, and Georgia wins 17-13, and then they're cruising on to a home game against Tennessee. That's very possible too. So we'll see, but it's going to be. It's going to be.
I don't know. I
can't wait to see this.
I mean, I don't know. Ole Miss's offense is ridiculous, and Jackson Dart, is playing he's playing out of his mind. He threw for 515 yards and 6 touchdowns last week. Mm-hmm. And that defense let up 31 points, but it didn't matter because you scored 63. I don't know. I think Beck is just completely falling apart, and if they get behind in a game, I don't think they're going to be able to get back ahead. That's what I think it is, especially because Ole Miss's defense is good. It's a top 10 defense in the country. They have 42 sacks on the season. It's the lead in the nation. Yeah. It's I don't know. It's I just think that even this double-digit win you want to talk about these last couple of weeks, and they're on this 4-game win streak. If you watched that Florida game last week, they ended up blowing that game open in the fourth quarter, but it was not. It was way closer than that score showed. And that was with Florida having to go to their third-string quarterback who transferred from Yale last year. Cool story about that kid or whatever. Did his workout tape on a torn ACL because the Yale doctors thought it was just a sprain. And then the Florida was like, well, come play for us. And then he found out from their doctors he tore his ACL. But I just if DJ Ladway plays in that whole game for Florida, we might be talking about Georgia as a 2-loss team, and they're not number 3 in the country at all right now.
It's true.
And I think just Ole Miss has, kind of righted the ship after that loss to LSU. And The playoff is an outside chance for them. They're pretty low in the SEC right now. They're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're ranked 7th in the SEC because they have those two conference losses.
But think about if they beat Georgia, they get ahead of Georgia this week, and Bama.
They won't get ahead of Georgia though, because they'll be 4-2. Georgia's 5-1 in the SEC.
Yeah, okay, but so think if they win one more game, and then Ole Miss is ahead of them, they have the tiebreaker over them. That's what I'm saying. Like getting the tiebreaker over Georgia would be huge for their SEC title chances, because right now Georgia wins out, they're in, and after this it's at Florida, which will be a tricky game, and then the Egg Bowl. So Ole Miss as a favorite. Ole Miss gets by that SEC schedule, and let's get into it. So first, let's get our prediction, because we can't talk about the SEC title picture right now. Which there's 5 1-loss teams. It's going to get messy. It's going to kind of figure itself out as the season goes along. These teams play each other a lot. But what do you think is going to happen in this game?
I'm going to go with Ole Miss, because I just think they're a more well-rounded team, and I think Jackson Dart is just playing much better football right now than Carson Beck is. Carson Beck has thrown 3 interceptions 3 times this year, and he's had 4 games of multiple picks, and I think this Ole Miss defense is just going to feed on him, and they'll be able to cash in a way that the Florida offense couldn't last week.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ole Miss wins a game that's played in the 20s. I think it'll be like 24-20 Ole Miss, something like that, but I think that they turn over Carson Beck, get enough explosive plays, and get a win over Georgia, and then Georgia's season spent into a desperation mode against Tennessee next week at home. It's
28-15.
Okay, so we're both picking the Georgia Bulldogs to go down this week. But to talk about this, the top of this SEC right now, Georgia right now going into the week 5-1, A&M 5-1, Tennessee 4-1, Texas 3-1. LSU, who we're going to talk about here in just a second here, hosting the Alabama Crimson Tide. They're 3-1. Vanderbilt 3-2. Ole Miss 3-2. Bama 3-2. That's the top of the SEC right now. And a lot of these teams still have games against each other. Obviously, we talked about the games this week. Bama, LSU, Ole Miss, Georgia and Tennessee play each other next week. We still have Texas and A&M to play each other at the
end of the year. Yep.
To figure that out. Vandy hanging around here is interesting because they get LSU and Tennessee at the end of the season. They have an interesting game with South Carolina this week, but Vandy's going to be a big part of this equation going into it later in the year. And then it's just, we're going to figure out a lot, and the SEC could cannibalize itself a little bit, which is really exciting with the competition that it's been this year. It's been a really fun conference as we expected, but I don't think we expected it to be as close and to have as much parity as it's had. So here we go into this game now. Both teams sitting with 2 losses. LSU obviously having the nice the advantage of losing that game to USC, so they're hanging ahead in the SEC title picture. Having this game at home, I will say I just looked up our Trainwreck Sports friend of the programs here, Chris Trapasso, is a draft expert for CBS Sports. So I wanted to see how many quarterbacks got drafted here, Mo. Mm-hmm. And teams love their quarterbacks. So think about this when you hear this. Number 3, Cam Ward to the Saints. The second quarterback drafted he has here, Jalen Milroe to the Cleveland Browns. Jalen Milroe is probably going to be a first-round pick. Now, yeah, that sucks for Jalen Milroe to go to the Browns.
He should be a first-round pick, but to the Browns, come on.
But more to talk about Milroe. And number 6, he had Shedeur Sanders going to the Raiders. Number 7, Garrett Nussmeier to the New York Giants, and then our boy that we were just talking about, Quinn Ewers, to the Rams at 16. So you would get to sit a year at least. That would be great. McVay and Ewers might be good together. But Nussmeier and Milroe, according to our friend Chris Trapasso, this is from 2 days ago, 2 top 10 prospects in this game. We've talked about how much we love Nussmeier. At least I've talked about how much I love Nussmeier and love that I've seen how he's grown throughout this year.
He's impressed me a lot this year.
And I'm not the biggest Milroe fan, and I've been critical of him throughout the last couple of years.
And I see this is a rough because you've been in on Nussmeier earlier, and I've been in on Jalen Milroe for a long time, all year.
Well, I can't deny Milroe. I can't deny Milroe anymore. He's been he's cleaned up the parts of his game that you would worry about. He's not as erratic as a thrower as he used to be. He knows when to pick his spots, and he's still just so dynamic. Like he's just so he has a certain just athleticism and shake that a lot of guys don't have. But this Bama team, in the 2 tough games they played this year so far, because I'm not counting Missouri as a tough game, they've lost. And I mean, they beat Georgia. I shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that. They beat Georgia, but losing on the road, they've lost the 2 tough games they've had this year at Vanderbilt, at Tennessee, and now they're at LSU. I just think the Tigers are – I think they're just as good as this team. It's the same thing with the line in the Georgia game where they're begging you to take Bama here, and I really love LSU. I've loved this LSU team. Just love the way Nussmeier's played so far this year. I think last week or a couple weeks ago against A&M – was it last week? A couple weeks ago? A couple weeks ago, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Against A&M, yeah, they got smacked in the mouth in that second half, especially. It was a different quarterback who came in, though, and had a lot of stuff against them
Reed,
that they weren't prepared for. And then you saw what that A&M team did last week on the road. Like, it's a team that, I don't know. It was just, it's a weird game. You kind of got to, you can't flush it down, but they have the margin for error in the SEC where they could afford that game. So I feel really good about this LSU team coming in focused, locked in. They are at home Saturday night in Death Valley. And I think these teams are close enough that I'm willing to just take the home team and lean there and go with LSU. But this is the fact that this game with both teams and these 2 losses, it's basically a playoff elimination game. This is what the 12-team playoff, like these are the types of games you love when you're talking about the 12-team playoff, because these are still 2 teams that if they make the field, like you could convince yourself they're going to make a run for a natty if one of these teams gets in, but one of these teams is going to be left out after Saturday night.
Yeah, I'm going Bama. Honestly,
wow.
I'm going Bama. This is, I mean, obviously you're right. Everything you're saying is right. Both these teams could be making a run. I just think, I don't know. I think Jalen Milroe is just a better quarterback. Obviously, he doesn't have like the passing yards that Garrett Musfire does, but I think what Milroe can do in a game, especially in like a high tension game like this, he always like shows up. Obviously, the Vanderbilt game is like a weird like misstep, and he didn't have his best time. But like he played well in the Tennessee game. We've seen him have like clutch moments in the past couple of years. If he can get ahead of it like he did in Georgia, and he was just, and play lights out. And I think the biggest X factor in this game is Ryan Williams, who I think is the best freshman in college football. And I know that's you could make it argument between him and Jeremiah Smith. I think Ryan Williams is better.
I would agree with that.
And he's going to be the biggest X factor in this game. And he is just like an absolute stud. I don't remember his exact number, but he has 7 touchdowns on this year and like 757 yards or 800 yards, around that number. I want to say I might be mixing that up with somebody else, but I don't know. It's obviously a massive rivalry game, but we talked about this last week. We're like, what's the comparison? Because we sadly about Penn State and Ohio State. Where is it? Where do these teams like lock up together? And we figured out that in this world, it's LSU and Alabama and SEC is another rivalry like that, where both teams consistently are ranked in like the top 10, top 15, and Alabama just wins every single time.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's been a couple of 2019 was a different story, but that's like one of the greatest college football teams of all time. Beat that Alabama team. And there's over like a dozen first-round picks between those 2 teams. And then a couple years ago, that got that win in overtime. That was Brian Kelly's first year. But Alabama, even with a new coach, even under a new coach, I don't know. I think it's just those guys know what they have to do to win. There's players that have been there for the last couple of years. They know how it feels to lose to LSU because they were there, but they also know how to beat them because they beat them last year. And, obviously, being in Death Valley is a very tough situation, but I'm still going to go with the Crimson Tide.
What's your score?
It's going to be high scoring. It's going to be 38-31.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going with LSU. I also think high scoring. I'll go 30. I'll go 41-38. I think it's going to be a high scoring affair though. Some other interesting matchups this weekend to watch out for. Miami at Georgia Tech. We were talking about that Georgia Tech team. Miami's might get got at some point. Florida playing better, traveling to Texas. That's just a fun matchup to see, honestly. Florida and Texas in an SEC game. The whiteout, Washington traveling to Penn State on Peacock there. Obviously,
yeah, it's kind of sad that's on Peacock.
There's nothing wrong with Peacock. People hating on Peacock too much. Yeah. Great app. Michigan and Indiana. Interesting game for the Hoosiers as they are 9-0, and if they get past this one, we know what one's next in a couple weeks in Columbus. That will be one of the biggest games of the season there. And then that's really it of note. Oklahoma, Missouri is an interesting game just for the fact that it's a renewed old rivalry now being played in the SEC, and then we mentioned the Holy War a little bit earlier, but another iteration.
So
you on the road at Utah.
You're not going to know the answer to this, but you see, you mentioned Florida, Texas. I was looking this up earlier. When was the last time they played each other? If you had to guess.
1984.
Oh no, longer.
1961.
Longer than that.
1949.
A little bit longer.
1929.
Not that long. 1940. The last time these two, I don't know. They just first time they met was a tie.
Crazy.
1924, they played each other. It was a tie. Then they had a home and home. 1939, 1940. Texas won both games. That's the last time they played each other.
That's weird.
It is really. It is odd, but I mean it's fun to look at though with some of these teams that were like. Obviously, you talk about renewing old rivalries, or it's like they're in a conference, but they used to have home and homes with each other. Like we talk about Colorado, Texas Tech, they play each other. Obviously, both in the Big 12 now for the first 2 years they've been here. They're 5-5 against each other all the time because they had back and forth against each other in the past for whatever reason.
They also were both in the Big 12 for a little stretch of time.
Right, but it's just it's interesting to see.
Last game in the last game it was in Gainesville in 1940, a 26-0 Texas win on December 7th.
Maybe history's gonna not repeat itself because they're at Texas, but let's see. We covered the Holy War. BYU's got a staggering decline in the Holy War. Utah is up 59-32 all time. That's tough.
Yeah, that's tough.
But no, always
that's tough.
Always fun. Always fun. Rivalries, especially rivalries that don't necessarily happen on rivalry week, are always a good time.
Oh yeah.
And maybe Florida Texas, maybe renew an old rivalry. Not really that's a rivalry, but get something going.
All right. Yeah. Enjoy the Saturday slate. We'll be back next week to preview the biggest games of Week 12. For Alex, Mike, this is Jake.